How to speak English fluently, 7 golden tips. Have you been learning English for years, but still cannot speak easily and fluently? You are not alone. Many people have no problem with reading or writing skills, but when it comes to English speaking, they just feel embarrassed and get stuck. In this post, I would like to share with you 7 practical tips that will help you improve your English speaking fast. Number 1. Learn phrases, not single words. Learning separate words is a very common mistake learners usually have. And of course, it's not an appropriate method to learn any language, not just English. Learning phrases seems like the smart way, since once you're familiar with the word chain, you may speak naturally and automatically, so your communication may go more smoothly. It'll take you less time to think if you learn phrases instead of words. Learning phrases helps avoid mistranslating. It's a bad habit that English learners usually think in their mother tongue and translate ideas into English. But languages mismatch. Mistranslation is possible to happen when learners just learn words and put them together following the order in their own language. It's clear now that we should learn phrases, not single words. But how? There are thousands of resources for you to pick up. Just make sure that they're authentic, or they reflect real-life language. In such an internet era, seeking for these resources isn't hard at all. Some suggestions are podcasts, newspapers, stories, audiobooks, movies, or songs. Taking notes of the phrases and sticking them somewhere in front of your eyes is also good for remembering. Seeing the phrases every day may improve memory a lot, even when you don't intensely learn them. When it comes to speaking, the phrases will automatically appear in your mind. The more input you have, the easier your communication will be. So study every single word, and it'll lead you nowhere. Let's study phrase, and phrase. Number 2. Pay less attention to grammar. I mean, focus on fluency, instead of grammar. Some experts even say you don't need to study grammar in order to be able to speak English fluently. Just look at the way kids learn to speak English. Even though they rarely learn any grammar rules, their English speaking can be considered fluent, natural, like native speakers. Grammar is just an aspect of English. There are other things which are much more important in speaking. Focusing too much on grammar stops you from opening your mouth to speak. The fear of losing face makes you nervous when it comes to speaking. I've seen a lot of English learners who are very excellent at grammar, yet can't say a word when it comes to speaking. So studying grammar doesn't help. So let's start with simple English, and then make it longer with more complicated words. And remember that your listener isn't an IELTS examiner who is going to analyze your language. Your listener just wants to get your messages. And they aren't patient enough to wait for you to go back and forth with all the grammar tenses in your mind. There are too many rules to learn in grammar, which can cause obstacles for beginners. So, the key idea is put grammar aside. Speaking will turn out to be less stressful and more joyful. Number 3. Listen to more English. The more input you have, the more output you can produce. Listening and reading are 2 channels of getting input. If you want to improve your English speaking, focus more on listening rather than reading. Learn with your ears, not your eyes. Listening helps to build up your vocabulary and grammar. Knowledge and understanding about some topics are also broadened if you often read and listen. Once again, the materials for input should be authentic. Some easily found resources I would recommend are TED Talks, BBC English News, cartoons and movies, songs, audiobooks, and thousands of others. Listening alone doesn't make you a fluent English speaker, but it's an important stepping stone for you to move on. Once you have enough input, speaking is just the last step in the process. When you listen to correct English sentences, they stay in your memory, and then you will be able to build similar sentences yourself easily. Number 4. Practice thinking in English. Are you translating from your mother tongue to English when you speak? If yes, stop it right now. Start to think in English when you speak English. Lots of people can listen and understand 99% what the English speaker says but fail to express a simple "got" because they can't find the right words. That's the reason why you have to think directly in English. I know it may not be easy for beginners since you're quite new to the language. But once you're familiar with the process, everything will be all right. Thinking directly in English reduces the time to think by half. It takes you double time when you generate ideas in your first language and then seek for equivalent words in English. Now perhaps you are eager to know how to think in English, aren't you? Everything needs training, you know. Start small with common and simple phrases. Do a little English thinking every day and you'll be surprised with your output one day. Start with some pieces like "let's go," "dinner's ready, come and get it," "good job," "you did it," "come on, come in," and so on. Number 5. Talk to yourself. Needless to say, self-practice plays an important role in learning a foreign language. You need to prepare yourself first before you happen to talk with others in a foreign language. The more you practice, the more comfortable you'll feel when using the language. Just like your mother tongue, you were born with it, so speaking isn't a big issue for you. The idea is to just try to familiarize yourself with English. How to talk to yourself. There are a lot of ways. Choose the most common situations in your daily life so that you may have real contexts. You may talk about your hobbies, family favorites, school holidays, or jobs. When you're at home alone, stand in front of the mirror and practice. It's better if you can use some body language along with the talk. When you're on train or bus, talk to yourself, or just think of something to talk about when you're in such situations. When you're doing some housework, talk to yourself. Try to maximize the amount of speaking every day. Number 6. Expose yourself to English-speaking environments. Talking to yourself may be not enough. Joining English-speaking clubs, speaking English with friends, making friends with foreigners, or getting involved in any place where English is used to communicate are recommended. What you need for your speaking skills is a daily practice. Make it a habit. Your speaking won't get better if you just take the input and leave it there without any output. After all the preparing of self-practice, the environment for the language to be spoken out is necessary. Just be aware that everything has its beginning. Speaking English as well. If you don't open your mouth to say a word, you'll never be a good English speaker. If you want to speak fluently, you have to force yourself to speak first. Gradually you'll become more fluent. Just remember, practice makes perfect. Number 7. Learn deeply. You can't speak English easily and fluently when you don't remember words, phrases, and sentence patterns instantly. A common issue of English learners is that they only try to learn as many language items as they can, yet never review them later on. A study has shown that people forget 40% of what they learned in 20 minutes, 77% of what they learned in 6 days, and 90% after 1 month. As you can see, our short-term memory can't store things for so long. When you don't spend time memorizing things, they will fade away from your memory easily. What you need to do is to turn the language from short-term to long-term memory. So, when it comes to speaking English, you can recall what you have learned immediately and automatically. In other words, you can speak English fluently. Have you ever heard a saying that repetition is the mother of learning? That means everything can be learned through training, and English speaking is not an exception. What does that mean by learning deeply? Well, learning deeply means you repeat something many times over again until you master it. For example, today you learn a phrase, work out, which means to train the body by physical exercise. You have repeated the phrase a few times and made different sentences with the phrase. You think you're done with this phrase and move on to the new one. Thank you for watching. Like and share. If you have any comment, please write it.